cloud. All right, cool. I'm Stephanie Ogburn, and I am a co-director of Women Who Code in Fort Collins. And I am on vacation in Albuquerque this week. But I am coming to you nonetheless to give you this talk, and it's going to be great. I think before we kind of get started, I would like us to just go around and like introduce ourselves briefly. So maybe say where your name, where you are based out of, and what you're excited to be learning right now. And I think we'll just have people call on someone after them. So I'll call on Christine.
Hi, I'm Christine Stone. I'm also a co-leader of Women Who Code. I'm currently in Fort Collins, Colorado, but next week I'll be driving to upstate New York. Be there for the summer looking for bugs. And I don't know if I'm excited to be learning it, but I've been learning about like TCP, UDP stuff because I have no idea how any of that works. And everyone I work with is talking about ports, and I'm just like, I have no idea what's going on. So ports is what I've been learning about. And Sarah.
Put my full name in my Zoom name because apparently it was just my first initial. My name is Sarah, and I am one of the other co-directors of Women Who Code. I'm a little bit frazzled today. My refrigerator is not working properly. And I live in Loveland. I work out of Fort Collins and at Colorado State University as an information security analyst. And I have been learning a lot about governance, risk, and compliance, which I do find really interesting. But to support those efforts, I'm also on a year-long plus endeavor to learn networking, which I don't find as interesting, but is necessary. So when people like talk about ports and stuff, you know what they're talking about. So I'm also working on that. And I will call on Nick.
All right. So I'm Nick. I'm based out of Fort Collins. Moving over to Timnath pretty soon, which is just east of Fort Collins. I just started a new position a couple of months ago, so I feel like I'm just learning too much right now. So I can't really say in particular on that, but like UX related, I'm just super excited to learn how to actually like incorporate that into my just general development work. I'll call on Sandra next.
Hi, I'm Sandra Iverson. I work at Virginia Tech Transportation Institute, and I've been working out of my home in Fort Collins long before it was cool. This last month, I've been learning Flutter. We've been porting an Android application to Flutter. So that is what I've been learning. And I guess I will call on Shirley.
Oh, you're muted, Shirley.
Yeah, I do that all the time. I'm sorry. I just recently graduated from a boot camp, so I've been learning whatever there is to learn. Really trying to network, trying to find a job. I don't know how an entry-level person's supposed to get a job because they don't have 5 years of experience, because that's what I see anymore. Junior level, entry level, 5 years of experience needed. Bachelor degree or master's. So I'm just trying to learn everything, trying to network. Started teaching myself Java because there's a lot of jobs out there for Java. So I kind of know React, just basics. So that's where I'm at. And I don't know who hasn't gone because I jumped on late.
I think Shreya, Salma.
Shreya,
so,
I can go. Hi, I'm Soumya. I'm from India originally, but I live in the Bay Area in California. Right now, I moved here a few months ago, and I'm right now a student at the Strategic Design and Management program at Parsons School of Design in New York. Everything's remote, so I'm working out of here. it's interesting. I mean, I'm very interested in UX design in general. I think I'm pivoting at this point. I used to be a set designer in Bollywood, but I've been doing a lot of UX research and design and a little bit of marketing and customer insights. So and this is also my first ever meetup. I've only heard about it today and I signed up for this class. So, I mean, a class, but like a meeting. So I'm excited to learn whatever there is. And nice to meet you all.
Yeah, awesome. Nice to meet you too. And Shreya posted in the chat, because I guess it's a little bit loud where she is. So that's fine. Nice to meet you too. And I hope you enjoy the talk. And if you have questions, you can post them in the chat and we'll try to keep an eye on that too. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Let me get my slides into, oh my God, share where people can see them. And I always forget like how to go into presentation mode for some reason. And then I'll share my screen.
Or they change it every time. So even if you do remember what you did last time, it's not the same the next time.
Okay, so can you guys see my slide where it says intro to user experience background / case study?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, great, perfect. And okay, let me just get one more thing here. Cool. Great, so yeah, this is an introduction to user experience research particularly. And so I'm going to give a little bit of background about that. And then I am going to dive into a case study project that I did in late 2020, early 2021 as a volunteer project for, or via the Boulder / Longmont user experience group. They do these kind of pro bono projects as a way to serve the community and then also give newer researchers a chance to work with more experienced researchers. And so I participated in that. So it was a great learning opportunity and also a chance to give back to a local nonprofit. So that's what the case study is about. Cool. So here's my background. In brief, I am a team lead at Radial Development Group. We're a software consultancy. We build web applications and mobile applications for clients who want web and mobile applications built for them. I am a software engineer primarily. That's what I do day in and day out, in addition to leading my team. And my experience is with a variety of applications. Because we are a consultancy, I've worked on just kind of a wide range of apps, from like veterinary health to meal planning to agricultural, like seed and fertilizer matching with soil type and crop needs and weather. So all different kinds of applications. So that's mostly what I've been focused on for the past 5 years. But I'm also a student of user experience best practices. It's something that I have had a long-term interest in. I think stemming from my natural bend towards being empathetic towards users and a background that I have from graduate school in anthropology, and a lot of anthropological methods are used in conducting user research. I'm also certified in user research methods by the Interaction Design Foundation. Their acronym is IXDF if you want to look them up online. And they're a major professional group for practitioners of user experience research. And I'm a user of software, right? Most of us are, probably all of us are, we're all using Zoom right now. So even if you weren't a user until just this moment, you are now. And I think that as a user of software, and being a user of software and having experiences with different types of software can help put you in the mindset of what it's like to be a user. Because we've all been there where you can't find the button to click or you fill out the form wrong. And those are our kind of negative user experiences. And then we've also been able to maybe seamlessly upload photos from our phone to the cloud and access them on a different device and had a pleasurable experience through that. So I think connecting to that user experience through your own experience is a really valid one. So what is user experience? The kind of go-to definition is just how the user experiences your service or product. It could be as minor as, you call a hotel and you talk to someone on the phone and they are unfriendly, so you don't book there, right? Like that is a user experience. It can be, you can have a user experience at a variety of different points throughout your journey. And so it's kind of your overall takeaway and your overall experience from using a product. I'm going to focus on software here, but user experience can be also in real life. So user experience research, I highlighted here, it's the systematic study of target users and their requirements to add realistic context and insights to the design process. And I highlight systematic study because it really is about research. The research is often qualitative, although it's sometimes quantitative. Actually, the study that we did was more quantitative for this case study that I'm going to talk about. But it's certainly taking a research-based approach. And what it is not, and what I'm not going to talk about, is colors and layouts. It intersects with that, and that's called user interface design, and it can inform that, but that's not what user experience research is. But you will often encounter researchers working on a team with designers, or if you work in a smaller setting, you might often be asked to fill both roles. But I'm not going to focus as much on the design part here. So how does UX research fit into the product lifecycle? I think that's something that as software engineers or people who are working in software in various capacities are going to be curious about, right? Because a lot of software doesn't have any user experience research as a part of it, or it has very little formalized UX research. And so I think the question for many people is, well, where can I fit this in, or how can I fit this in? And the good news is, like, you can fit it in all stages of the product lifecycle. So you can have a launched product and you can still do user experience research, or you can have an idea for a product and do user experience research. And in all of those different phases, I think you can find some benefit. So this slide is maybe a little overwhelming, and I'm going to break it down as we move along. So don't worry about like taking in everything on here. But this wheel over here on the left, the software development cycle, is a really common graphic. If you work in software, you'll probably see something like this at some point. And it's basically just the stages that we go through as we develop software. So we plan, we analyze, we think about what we're going to do, we design, we build it, we do testing, and then it's out there in the wild and you're maintaining it. But that circle continues because you're always going to want new features. The market will change or the tech will change. And so it's just kind of this like Ouroboros where you're cycling around all the time. And the graphic on the right is just a demonstration of the fact that user experience activities can take place all throughout that cycle. And it's only broken down into 4 steps here, but I think there's overlap, and you can kind of see, and I will get into where in each of those phases you're going to be able to do user experience research if you want. So no matter where you are, you can bring it in. So the first phase, discovery. What are the things you can do when you're in discovery for a product? So discovery is like, you're just figuring out what your product's going to do, what its target market is, what are the main features, those sorts of things. So a common example of what you might do when you're in discovery for, say, a product like Uber, before products like Uber and Lyft really got off the ground, is someone might have done user interviews. And so if you have an idea for an app like Uber, you say, oh, wouldn't it be nice if instead of waiting around for the bus, you could just call someone to come pick you up? And so you might do user interviews with your target users. So you might go out into the field and find people who are legitimately waiting for the bus, or people at the airport who are waiting for a shuttle, or people who are going to hail a taxi. And you try to connect with those target users and do interviews with them. Obviously, that's challenging. Finding users to interview and to get this information from is often one of the harder parts of doing user research. But I think there's a lot of creativity in that. So another option is something like a diary study. So if you have a hard time kind of pinning users down, like maybe they're coming and going, another tactic is to give them a diary and say, oh, so can you write down when you're doing these things, how you're feeling, what your needs are, that sort of thing. So these are just like early stage research methods that allow you to hone in on what people's needs are, and that would allow you to hone in on what are the primary features of your app. Because when you're starting to build an app, you're going to have to make a lot of choices because your resources are scarce. So doing this kind of research can help you go in the right direction more quickly, or narrow off or cut off the wrong direction, so you don't waste time doing something that no one really wants. Another tool that you can use here is called competitive analysis. So for a class that I took on user research, we were working on building a flashcard app. And so you can download different flashcard apps that already exist and mess around with them, see what you like, see what you dislike. And often you can find like big holes in what is offered in the mainstream. And then your product can fill that hole or do it better than they do it, have a better experience. And that's also like a really great way to gain market share. If you think about what Google did with Google Docs, like you had Microsoft Word and track changes. It was like such a pain though to collaborate on documents. And then when there's something in the cloud that everyone can use, it doesn't have really any more features than Word. It actually has less in terms of like formatting and that sort of thing. But the ability to collaborate in real time was a feature that broke through and allowed something like Google Docs to become really mainstream, even when everyone already used Microsoft Word. So that's kind of an example of doing a competitive analysis and seeing where you might have a competitive advantage. So the next phase, exploration and development. This is where you will actually start to think of like how users are going to use your app. So you might create things like user journeys or task flows, task analyses. You're actually going to draw flowcharts and say, okay, the user is going to click on, the home or open up the app, and then they will click this button and that'll take them here. And then they will do this thing and that'll take them here. But if they do this other thing, they'll go over here. And so you're actually really thinking through how users will flow through tasks. So that's task analysis or journey mapping. Those are pretty similar activities. You might create personas. So if you've done some of the previous work to interview users, that can help inform your personas. Or you might have an idea of what types of people or what audience segments you're aiming at, and you might create personas that way. And personas are basically just like archetypes of your different user groups. So if you're building an app and you're like thinking that the main users are going to be, 30 to 45-year-old mothers or grandmothers, you might make a grandmother persona and a mother persona, and those will be kind of your guiding lights as you look to what they might want to experience as you build your app. You would do information architecture in this stage. Although I think revisiting information architecture is always an important thing to do, because I have noticed throughout my life as a user that information architecture is like an ongoing struggle for many applications. I think it's because many of them start with sort of one or two purposes, and that morphs over time, and information architecture like doesn't often keep up. So that's something that I'm personally kind of interested in, because like not being able to find things in logical places is often a common user challenge. And then you would do prototyping and wireframing. So this is where you might come the closest to doing that sort of design. And what you're doing is creating a way that the user will flow through the app, but it's very bare bones. It's just black and white, boxes and text. It's not going to be, you know, colors, fonts, what the voice and tone of your app is going to be. It's just very task oriented, I guess I would say. And there's some great apps that allow you to do this, and then you can allow users to click through and test your prototypes, and that's a really nice feature of some different apps. So then on the next phase, testing, I think this is probably a phase that a lot of developers experience. Like you've built the app, you have some features out there, you maybe have like beta testers or a small number of users. This is a great time to do usability testing. I've done usability testing. Oh yeah, sorry, I had a question, so I'll go back to that. Is information architecture a low fidelity version of a wireframe? No, I wouldn't say that. Information architecture is how the information on your website is structured. So like the Dewey Decimal System is a form of information architecture. It organizes books by numbers depending on the type of book that they are. And we use it to know where to find books of certain types. And I think a common way, like menus in apps are maybe the most common type of information architecture in apps. So it's like, if you have a healthcare app, I was just using my healthcare app earlier today, you might expect that all your medical results and tests would be under one menu, because in your mind, those things seem similar. So the architecture of the information is how the information is structured in the app. And you might be confused as a user if like your lab results were in one place, but your like prescription medications were in another place, because to you, you're like, well, that's just all about things about me medically. But if the people that design the app, like they might have thought about it totally differently and put those in different places because they categorize them in different ways. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah,
I'm actually going to talk a little more about it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, okay, you're going to talk a little more about it then.
Well,
yeah, I just have questions.
Is a little bit more about information architecture, because we actually did user research about information architecture.
Okay.
So the case study that I'm going to go into, but go ahead, ask your question.
No, I was just wondering if I could see like an example, but if you're going to go over it, then it's perfect. I'll wait for it.
Okay, cool. And then if you have more questions, we can talk about it. Yeah, but I did definitely want to hit on usability testing, because I think that's like a really, really useful tool. Usability testing is basically when you give users tasks to complete that are common tasks that you would expect someone to be able to complete using your app, like the main features of your app or important features of your app, and you watch them try to complete it, or in today's COVID world, you often video, like screen share with them in video while they try to complete that task. So on like a nonprofit webpage, you might say, for a usability test, you might say, okay, I want you to go to the website for Red Cross, and I want you to get to the point where you can donate $50. And that would be their task, is to like be about to donate $50. and you just observe them as they try to do that. And it's very informative. If you ever have the chance to do it or have the chance to watch, like people do things that you would not expect. I think it's often a very useful tool, and it helps you understand where users might be getting confused. Like maybe they're going to look for a button that says donate, but the Red Cross has a button that says give now, and that like trips them up. And so there's not always going to be one right answer, but if you find that, you know, a majority of the users are looking for something that's not there, then that can help guide you as you iterate through to make that task easier for users. And if you end up doing these, I highly, highly recommend videotaping them. Or if you can't do that, to do it with a second person who can take notes while you watch, because it is really hard to take notes and observe someone do it at the same time. You end up sort of missing things. Oh, for how many participants? There's like a rule of 5. So basically for any one feature, they say that 5 people are enough for you to find the major holes in that particular feature. So that's not actually that bad. You know, like 5 people isn't that hard to, like 5 users isn't that hard to find. So it doesn't have to be a ton of people, but you would want to get kind of your targeted users to do it if at all possible. But if not, really anyone is better than no one at all. And I have done usability testing through Zoom, and I actually love it because I have people share their screen with me, and then I give them the task and I record while they're doing it, or they record, or they give me host and I record it. But then I have this video record of them trying to do the task, and I can like see their mouse move and hear they're talking. They're like, oh, I'm trying to find this, I can't do this. And so it's actually, I find it really effective to do it during COVID times. It's almost easier in a way because you can video. So yeah. Oh, do you need to make sure the 5 people are from different demographics? Not necessarily. It really depends on what who your target users are. So like if my target users are just like moms and grandmas, I could just get 5 moms and grandmas. I don't have to make sure that they're from different demographics. They're all going to be different anyway, but if you have a bunch of different demographics, you might want to get more testers and be like, okay, I want to test that it works with these teenagers, and I'm going to get around, 3 to 5 people from that demographic, and then you might want to get another 5 people from a really different demographic if they are very different. Yeah, so however many, the question is, do the same 5 participants test all the features? And I try to limit the tests, and I don't have a lot of experience with this because this isn't what I do professionally, but I've tried to limit the test to like three features, just because I don't ever really want them to last longer than like 30 minutes to an hour. And so if you give people 3, like you give them one task, they complete it, you give them another task, they complete it, you give them another task, they complete it, you have an intro and you have like a summary at the end where you're like, thanks very much, like your $5 gift certificate to Starbucks will be coming in the mail or whatever. Like by that time, it's ending up being 30 minutes to an hour. And so I usually try to stay focused on testing just a few features. Also, it can be overwhelming to get a ton of data on a bunch of different features at once. So you might really want to focus on, okay, these are the main features I want to test right now for this research effort based on like this hypothesis, because that will allow you to stay focused on what the results are. Otherwise, if you test like vastly different features, you're just going to have like a ton of data that will be hard for you to parse through. You might just want to break that into like different research efforts. In terms of testing, no, you can test with a low fidelity prototype. I've done that for the card sorting application that I built. You can just draw it up in like Balsamic or Marvel or InVision. There's like a bunch of different apps, and it's clickable, and you can test without it being high fidelity. And I actually think that is a better option, especially if you're kind of bootstrapping a product, because you don't put all the time into design before finding out that this flow is really confusing to users. Then you find it out earlier and rearrange it and maybe test it one more time, or at least know that it's probably better based on the feedback, and then put the time into designing it. So yeah, so usability testing is, I think, like a really great tool. There's a whole book on usability testing called Don't Make Me Think. And it's an older book. It's been around for like 20 years, but there's a newer edition with like some updated stuff for mobile. But I really recommend checking out that book. It is a good book. And accessibility testing would be somewhat similar. I'm actually not familiar with accessibility testing, but that would be basically making sure that your app works for people who access the web or the app in non-traditional ways. So they might be using a screen reader or something of like that, or a specialized mouse, or specialized keyboard, or there's like a variety of ways that people can need apps to be accessible to them. So you can test with those sorts of users if that is important to your app, that it work for them, and make sure that they can complete features as well. Okay, so like the last phase of kind of product development as it intersects with user experience research is the listen part. So your product is out in the world, you have users, and they are creating data for you like all the time. And that's really useful. So you can use analytics like Google Analytics or whatever other analytics you might have on your app or site to understand more about your users. You can learn that 95% of them go to your about page and 3% of them go to your volunteer page, and maybe realize that if you want people going to your volunteer page, you need to do something differently, because that's not happening. So Google Analytics, or analytics on how people are using your app, is super useful. You can also do A/B testing, so you can put up 2 versions of your app that are slightly different and see how one group reacts to one version and one group reacts to another version, and see if you get the results you need. This is used a lot in like marketing or sales. So you're like, do more people buy my product when I show them the website that it looks like this, or do more people buy my product when I show them the website that looks like this? But it can be used for a variety of tasks. And then of course, feedback is omnipresent in our world, right? There's App Store reviews, Play Store reviews, Google reviews. People are going to reach out to you on Twitter, social media. You're probably going to get user feedback. So that can also be really useful. We do often say there's kind of a maxim that you should listen to your users, but not necessarily do what they say. And so the feedback is useful because it lets you know that there is an issue, but users also are not app developers or designers themselves usually. And so you might not need to do what they tell you to do, but you need to listen to them because they're telling you something is wrong. So they might want you to, put this button in the middle of your page because that's the most important thing. But you might say, well, that's not best practice. A lot of people don't expect it there. I'm going to actually just change the color of it so it's more visible. What you're telling me is that you can't find it. So that's kind of an example of that. And then you can do surveys or other kind of standard ways of getting feedback from users as well. And this graphic is maybe a little overwhelming too, but I thought it was neat because it actually breaks down the most commonly used research methods for UX. And you can see in the purple that starts at task analysis and goes down to card sorting, there are a lot of methods for that exploration phase. So I think that is indicative of the fact that that's where a lot of this research takes place, is in the exploration phase. But I just went on about usability studies for a really long time, and I think that they are really important. And so there's definitely a place for doing research in all of these phases, but I just thought this was kind of a neat graphic. You might see, like, hear people talk a lot about things like task analysis and journey mapping, which are basically the same thing. You might hear people talking a lot about usability studies, and here they say in person and remote, because that did really used to be how things were, but it's completely flip-flopped. Like, everyone's doing remote usability studies now. And I don't, like, with the exception of like hardware and things that are physical, I don't think there's a huge loss from doing remote usability studies. But obviously with some things, it's a lot better if you can be in person. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears into the case study now, and we're really going to be focused on this high school cycling league website work that we did. Before I go into that, are there maybe any other questions about the general stuff that I just covered? And also, if questions on that come to mind later, that's totally fine too. But I just wanted to pause and give some time for that.
I just want to say I do like a lot of the stuff that you just talked about, but I never like knew the right name for it. Or like I don't personally do it, but my team does all this stuff, and it's cool to like know that.
Nice.
Like, they have
Yeah.
names.
Cool. Well, I'll go ahead and jump into this case study. This is with the Colorado High School Cycling Lead, and it's their website that we worked on. So they're coloradomtb.org. This is just a screenshot of their website. And they basically put on mountain bike races for teams of high schoolers throughout the state of Colorado. So, high school sports, traditionally, like every high school has a team, like football, and they play each other throughout the state. Mountain biking is a little different because schools don't really sponsor mountain bike teams. So what this organization does is it allows students to organize, often by high schools, but sometimes like by regions. So like there might be a Boulder team, but there's like 4 high schools in Boulder, for example, because it's not that big of a sport yet either. So it's basically like a way for there to be a high school sport for mountain biking in Colorado. That's what this nonprofit does. It puts on the races, it runs the season, and that's like its mission. So we connected with this group because one of the user experience researchers that was working on the volunteer projects was indirectly connected with the Colorado Mountain Bike League. She's sort of in the biking world and knew that they were interested in getting some user experience help. So we talked with her at first, and she was essentially our product owner, this woman named Kate. And when we talked with her and the web designer that put together their site, they came up with a problem statement, which is that users cannot always find the information that they need on the website. So they've obviously heard from users, or it's hard for them personally to find the information. So that was what they presented us with as their primary concern and the primary area that they thought they wanted help on. So for phase 1 of our research, we wanted to validate or just test out that idea with existing users. So not just take the word of Kate and Sarai, who are very familiar with the website, but maybe not the primary audience of the website. We wanted to get some validation on that from existing users. So after we conducted a kickoff with Kate and Sarai to learn about what they thought the issues were, we did some preliminary guided interviews with existing users. So we asked them to connect us with some of their users, and we conducted focused interviews with those people to learn about their experience using the site. We also asked Kate, the product owner, to give us a breakdown of their primary user groups so we could know who their main audience was. And they really broke that down for us into coaches, riders, and parents. So the coaches are the coaches of the teams, the riders are the people that ride in the race, and the parents are the parents of the riders. So here's a screenshot of our structured interview. And I just wanted to include this to highlight that the interview is very targeted. So we actually wrote out the questions, and when you do it in person or over Zoom or whatever, you don't necessarily read the questions word for word, but you're trying to use the questions to get specific information. And so we want to ask similar questions of all of the people. And it's also guided in that we say, oh, you know, number 3, do you use the league website? If no, then questions 4 through 6 are irrelevant. So we're going to move on to question 7. And so we're just trying to find out basic information like how they're involved with the cycling league, what are their feelings about the cycling league, if they use the website, and how they use the website. And that's what this interview was really about. And so we also created this synthesis, I guess I'd say like structure or format, where we were filling this out immediately after or during those structured interviews. So we had motivations and goals, keywords, pain points, and surprises. Those were like our topic levels. And then what we pulled out of the interview, we filled in to this matrix essentially. And that just also helped us focus the results of these interviews. And as you can see, people do have some trouble using the site. Like they try not to go to the site. They hate using it on the phone. They never can find what they need. They don't know where the races are. And like for a site that is for a league that puts on races, like that's pretty important because that's kind of the main thing that they do. They also are all really like the mountain bike league, and that's nice because it gives us some positive feedback to include in our report. So having like these quotes from users and like getting users' feelings about the website, even though they have trouble using it, it kind of allows us to deliver that feedback in a way where there's positive and negative mixed together. And I think that can be helpful for stakeholders. This is different from a persona in that a persona is sort of anonymous. Like a persona is just your target user sort of idealized. So you would maybe have a picture of what they might look like. You'd have some demographic information. You might say, oh, my target user, her name is Melinda Watts. She's 40 years old. She lives in Fort Collins. She has 2 kids and a dog. And that would be, and you would describe her needs and her motivations, but it's much more idealized. It's coming from kind of an amalgamation or a joining of what you think users are like. This is from interviewing like one actual user. So that's kind of the difference between this interview synthesis and a persona. Okay, so on to phase 2, which was a real pain. Basically, we decided that people couldn't find things. So the major problem that they were having was where their information was and how it was organized. So a common way to deal with information architecture issues is to do an activity called a card sort. And what a card sort allows you to do is give people categories and have them sort them into natural groupings. And that's really useful because if you have your users do this, they will tell you where things naturally belong to them, which might be different from where things naturally belong to for you, but you're not the user, so it doesn't matter. For people who are using the Colorado mountain bike website, we want them to find information grouped in a way that is logical for them. So the hard part about this is that the website was so poorly organized that we had to like comb through it to find the different categories. It wasn't just in the menu. You would click on one page and it would have like 20 links to different things on that page. And then we'd be like, are these things important? Are they random? So we scoured their website and then came up with this, and it's kind of a combination of things that were in their menu and things that were on major pages. And then we showed it to Kate and got her input on whether these were kind of like the main pieces of information that were on the website. So that actually took a lot of work, just like harnessing our own understanding of the information on the site. Oh yeah, I didn't mean to leave this slide in actually, because I kind of changed things around, but this is just a tiny screenshot. I'm sorry, it's so small, of one of their web pages where it just has like 100 links to other things. Okay, so, what I actually wanted to do here before I showed you guys the results is if I can exit out of my screen share, maybe, oh no, there we go. Okay, is show you this tool that we use. So can you still see my screen? It says BananaCom.
Yep.
Okay, so we use this tool called Optimal Workshop to do the card sort. And I wasn't actually aware of these tools before, but there's a number of them. And this is just a demo. So it allows you to do card sorts in a super organized and seamless fashion. So this is like a model card sort that they just let you play around with. So you can start off your card sort with kind of just some welcome text. You can customize that. And then the people taking the card sort survey have to answer some basic demographic questions, and that can help you understand a little bit more about the users. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then you actually are taken to the card sort view. And so this is what we actually had our users do. There's a list of these options to the left, which were those categories that we came up with. And then you drag them over and you drop it to create a group. And so what to do when my cell phone has been broken or stolen. And then I might say like, okay, I have no idea what's going to go with that. So I'm going to make a new category, international calling rates for my home phone, and maybe a tool to calculate the best cell phone plan for me. And then I can name that, like I can say, cost options or something like that. And this one I might have like FAQs, because that seems kind of like an FAQ to me. And so then you just have users drag things into the categories that they make, and you end up with the results. So it's super easy and like a really nice tool. So I just wanted to show that. And then you can also, I'll just show you what they give you with the results. They give you a lot of really nice tools to parse through the results. So one of the really cool ones is this Similarity Matrix, where you can actually see where people like group things. So the darker like groupings are like, oh, 80 people put this in the same category with the thing. And so like that with these other things. And so that's like a really neat kind of visual of like where things are clustering. And you'll see, I'll show you a screenshot of our Similarity Matrix. Like these things all cluster really nicely, but ours like did not get great clustering. And so I think actually one of the things we learned, and we talked about this in our report, is that like a lot of their information is actually fairly diverse. And so like maybe having it on different platforms or organized in like multiple ways is going to be the best choice for them. But it is like a really neat tool. And the other thing that's neat is these categories. And so you can say, let's say like some people put a 3G category and other people put like a 3 little g, and you can like group them together, or like about us. For some reason, oh, these are separate because they don't have the same cards in them, but you can be like, oh, people mean about. And so you can group these using the tool and say, oh, these all fall under about. It's just that people are using slightly different names. And so that's kind of a cool tool. Like for us, people use something like coaches corner, for coaches, and we could group all those together and see like what was similar under those things that were all given the same top level name. So it's a pretty neat tool. It costs money. Cool tools cost money. But they gave us a free month because we were working for a nonprofit. So that's why we were able to use it. But there's other card sorting platforms too. I'm sure they all have their different like bells and whistles, but I just thought it was kind of a neat tool. I hadn't used that before. So in terms of the results we got after we ran that card sort, we did ask for demographic information on the users doing the card sort, and this was sent out to people who are subscribers to the Colorado Mountain Bike League newsletter, and they already have segmentation on their newsletter, so they actually only sent it out to people who have identified as parents, coaches, and riders. So we asked that question nonetheless because segmentation is imperfect, just to see how people self-identified. And so if you see, they sent it out to, I don't know, 400 people, something like that. You can see that about 150 people, 149 clicked on the link, which isn't bad, honestly. And then we had 9 riders answer, 28 parents answer, 43 coaches answer, a volunteer, and then a couple of people that identified as other. Since we had previously talked with them about the primary audience being parents and coaches, and then to a lesser degree riders, we actually decided, like looking at this response, to only use responses from parents and coaches. And the tool allows you to filter out based on answers to questions. So we ended up using the 28 parents and the 43 coaches. Their response were like the data set that we actually ended up using. So here's our similarity matrix. I missed a slide here. Sorry, I'm going to go back because I did want to talk about this. So the card sort that I demoed for you from Optimal, that was what's called an open card sort. So you're sorting and you're providing all the category names. A closed card sort is when we provide you the category names, but you sort the topics. And a hybrid is when we provide you with some category names, but you can make your own as well. For this project, we really preferred open because we wanted users to tell us what made sense to them. But the product owner thought that that would be too overwhelming for users because it's like 30 categories and they are kind of different. And if you see this blank screen, you might just get overwhelmed, which is like a totally fair point. So when we talked with her about what we thought categories should be, and so we came up with these 3 categories as like the starter categories, but instructed people that they could add their own categories as well. And what we suspected would happen did happen, which is a lot of people just threw things into those 3 categories because they're already there and that's easy and you don't have to think quite as much. And we're always trying to conserve our brain power and not think quite as much if we don't have to. So it wasn't ideal for us because we hadn't really wanted that, but the product owner was fairly strong on that. And I think we were still able to get some good results. And sometimes you just have to compromise because you're not in charge of everything. And that's how the world is. Yeah, so in terms of our results were pretty heavily weighted for users placing those cards in the provided categories, in those 3 categories. And then we use the optimal tool to further cluster the user groupings. And so you can see like we did have some clustering here at the top and like a little bit here in here, but like not super high. Like there's definitely some things that like if you get stuff in the middle, that means it like matched up a lot with like something down at the bottom as well as something in the middle. And so you're like, okay, people like, some people really thought it should go with this one thing, but other people really thought it should go with this other thing. So it wasn't like the best clustering ever, but I think that's still useful information. So in terms of what we finally recommended to them, this was their original menu, had about, support, events, volunteer teams, resources, and register. And the suggestion was race day, coach resources, rider resources, support the league, and league overview. So these 2 at the bottom were the ones that were provided, or 2 of the 3 that were provided, and we did think that those were useful to keep. These other 3 are really focused around races and then coaches and riders. And the reason we recommended that is because there were pretty strong groupings of things for coaches and things for riders. And then people also in both the interviews that we did and the survey questions that we did along with the card sort survey talked a lot about needing to find information for the race. So like, where is the race? When's the next race? What time is the race? How early do I have to show up? Like just things about the race. And so that was a suggestion as well. We also made some additional recommendations to them. So their menu structure is pretty traditional right now. They have just that like menu across at the top, horizontal menu, and then you hover and then there's a drop down with further menu options. But they have so much information on their website that we recommended if they want to keep that information, that they move to something called a mega menu. And you'll see this often on like news websites with lots of content where it's like a big menu. If you open it or hover over it, shows you like a lot of categories and a lot of subcategories. And at a glance, you're able to see, oh, they offer all of this information. So that was a recommendation to them because they do have so much information. And these recommendations are what are called like a heuristic evaluation because we didn't actually do research on them, but it's based on like known best practices. So what works for most sites, what most users are accustomed to. We also learned through the survey that we did that all users are visiting their site to find race information. So we suggested that they add some sort of widget or something that's like akin to maybe like a ski area saying, oh, we got this much recent powder. They have, you know, a little widget at the top saying, oh, the next race is this. Just allowing people to find information about that really quickly. Before they had about us in their main menu, and that's often in the footer or like a separate menu item like off to the far right. So we recommended pulling that out. If I don't know if you recall, but their website had a huge photo when you first came to it. And that's how every single page on that site is. So you always have to scroll past the huge photo to get to the information you need. And so we recommended that they do something nice with their photos, but not maybe have a huge photo at the top of every single page. And the other thing we noted is that they have multiple channels to reach their users. They have a newsletter, they have social media, they have coaches that can talk to the riders as well. So maybe they think about what information is most important for their website. They've kind of been throwing up everything on their site since the beginning, which was maybe 10 or 15 years ago. But it's possible that that doesn't all need to be on the web. And so that was another thing we talked to them about. So I'm just gonna close with, like, we gave I think that the challenge with research is we learned a lot and we gave them a lot of useful and good information. But in a development process or a product life cycle, it's always kind of a give and take. So there's a lot of actionable feedback in the report. We gave them like a 15-page report, but it can also be overwhelming. And so this was a volunteer project. So we're not in, everyday touch with these people. We don't work with them. But I think in order to get your research used, you need to continue to have this like ebb and flow or give and take. So say we go to them and say, you need a mega menu, and they say, well, our WordPress theme doesn't support that. That's a big technical lift for them to find a new theme, like install it. They don't have a web developer. So then you can think as a researcher, okay, like, is there another way to accomplish this goal? Like the last thing that we talked about with them is maybe you're doing too much on one site. And that is actually an attainable goal, right? You could actually sit with them and think about what are the main things people need and simplify the content that they have there in the first place. And then maybe they don't need a mega menu and they don't have to totally overhaul their theme. So I think one thing that I really learned from this case study, and I think that is really a practical application of research in all product companies, is there's always going to be limitations. And so there are multiple paths you can take to better serve your users. And so not getting stuck on like doing this one thing, but listening to what users are telling you and seeing if you can help meet their needs even just a little better by changing something small to start off with, is a lesson that I took home from doing this, working with a nonprofit who really is resource limited. And they haven't made our changes yet. We delivered this report in March, but we are still in touch with them. So I hope we can continue to work with them to get some of those changes implemented at least. So yeah, I'm going to open up to questions if anyone has them.
Yeah, I have a question. So I know that UX research is not specific to digital products, but when you are doing research for a digital product, say for an app or a website, where does the UX researcher stop and the UX designer's work begins? Because I know that as a UX researcher, you have to also dabble in a little bit of prototyping and wireframing, but then where is that line drawn?
I think that is going to be really company dependent. Like I said, but at the beginning, I do actually think that some companies are going to ask you to do all of those things, like do the research and do the design. And so like you might be getting user feedback and then iterating your designs based on that. It's not something that I have a ton of experience with because I'm primarily working in a technical role, but the people that I have talked with, I think it's actually somewhat different for every company depending on how they want to have it set up. But I would envision it being iterative as well. So you can go to the design team, or you're a part of the design team, and you can say, hey, I've got these findings, and interact with them on what's the best way to update designs. Or, hey, sorry, Siri, I didn't mean to tell you that. Siri got really excited. I accidentally hit something on my touch bar because I was trying to wipe the dust off of my computer. But yeah, I think it's going to look really different depending on like the size of your company and how many designers you have. But I do think it would still be iterative, like you presenting findings to the designer saying, okay, the designer might even come to you with questions. Like they might say, hey, I'm thinking about doing it this way or that way. What do you think users would prefer? And you can go find that out, or maybe you already have that knowledge.
Yeah, I have another question. It's completely unrelated, but I was just wondering, what do you think about like the future of the research process? Like, do you think at some point it's going to be automated? And I know that like there's a lot of innovation being done in like machine learning and AI, but what do you think?
I think there is probably room for automation. Like I participate in this website called usabilitytesting.com or usertesting.com or something like that. They like pay you a small amount of money to take user tests. And that's like somewhat automated, right? Like there's no one on the other end observing you. You're just like doing little tests where they show you two versions of a website and then ask you questions about what you remembered. I mean, you're always going to have the user on one side. So like that can't be automated, but I think there's definitely room for it. Like I can see an AI or a bot giving you tasks to do, and then even tracking, oh, their mouse slowed down or they clicked the wrong thing. Like that's all totally stuff that you can automate. Who knows when that'll happen, but there's definitely room for it at some point.
Yeah, thanks.
This was interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And everyone should go buy Don't Make Me Think. It's a quick read, like you can maybe read it in an hour. And I think it's a really good book.
Yeah, and thank you for doing this. It was super insightful.
Cool. Great. Well, I will stop recording now. Maybe. There you go.